David Chair. 21 to order. Roll call, please.
Hannah here.
Sullivan here.
Perillo here.
Laura here.
David Chair.
Guzikowski here.
Donnie here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
Okay, before we do the minutes, Carrie, would you please read in the notice of video conferencing for this meeting?
The City of Oak Creek is authorized to hold this public meeting remotely during the COVID-19 public health emergency under the March 16th and March 20th advisories from the Office of Open Government and the Wisconsin Department of Justice. Per the advisories, this meeting being conducted via Zoom video conference with telephone conferencing capabilities was duly noticed per the City of Oak Creek Municipal Code and statutory notice requirements more than 24 hours in advance of the meeting. Members of the public have been advised of the options for participation via direct mailing to property owners within 300 feet of a proposal, via the COVID-19 information page on the city's website, via social media, and via the information contained on the meeting agenda. This meeting may also be viewed at the city's YouTube page, the link for which was contained in all aforementioned notice methods. The meeting recording will also be accessible on the city's YouTube page within 48 hours. Plan commissioners and participants are initially muted upon joining the meeting. Plan commissioners and staff have the ability to mute and unmute their microphones throughout the meeting. Please mute at all times except for roll call, motions, voting, and when recognized by the chair. Roll call and voting will occur per the usual and customary procedure, starting from Plan Commissioner seating positions south to north in the Common Council chambers. The chair will facilitate questions and comments by calling on each Plan Commissioner or by requesting the use of the raise hand function in the Zoom webinar control panel. Only speak once you have been recognized by the chair or moderator. Applicants, their representatives, and all other participants who wish to speak will be unmuted when there is a direct request for information from the Plan Commissioner's staff, when the participant utilizes the raise hand function within the Zoom webinar control panel and the moderator verbally indicates that they are unmuted, when a phone participant dials *9 to indicate that they wish to speak and the moderator verbally indicates that their line is open. When unmuted, all participants must state their name and address for the record, then proceed with comments or questions. Questions and comments may also be entered into the Q&A function within the Zoom webinar control panel. Staff and/or the moderator will monitor this function during the meeting and provide the information requested. There shall be no private messages or side conversations during the meeting utilizing the chat or Q&A functions. Chat and Q&A messages are part of the public record. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Carrie. I'd like to welcome all the commissioners to 2021 and a new planning year. We will remain busy in the city of Oak Creek this year. We will continue on our ordinance updates. So that's going to be a lot of work coming up in 21. And we will stay video conferenced until the near future, until things do change. Before we, we got to do the minutes from December 8th. We almost went a month. So I hope you all enjoyed your holidays, had a good break. But if you would please now take a look at the December 8th minutes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I can interrupt you for just a moment. There was a change to the agenda that was sent out yesterday afternoon, and that would be the nomination and election appointment of a secretary.
You are correct. Should we do that before the minutes, Carrie, or after? Does it matter?
Well, you can take them out of order. I thought it would make sense to elect the secretary before you approve the minutes, just so that we have that out of the way, but it's up to you.
No, again, thank you for the reminder because it did slip my mind. Carrie, would you like to just briefly explain to all the commissioners and anybody that may be on the call or streaming us exactly what we're talking about? Because we never have recognized the secretary, at least in my time here.
So this was something that came around in a roundabout kind of way. Ask a question and you get 1,000 answers that you didn't expect. So there is a section of code that does say that annually the secretary should be nominated and elected and appointed by the Plan Commission. Actually, it's for all the boards and commissions. What has kind of facilitated this, however, is the director has been historically, at least going back as far as 2001 and maybe even prior to that, has served as both ex officio and also as the secretary. And per the code, a member of the Plan Commission, which can be a regular member or an ex officio member, can be nominated and appointed as secretary. Just due to the internal, workings that we have here and the duties that have been kind of delegated. Doug and I had a conversation about those duties, and we determined that if the Plan Commission was okay with it, that I would be willing to step in and serve as ex officio and secretary. If the Plan Commission doesn't wish to change anything, that means that Doug would be ex officio and secretary. It wouldn't really change anything for the Plan Commission's procedures or anything. It was just kind of like a delegation of duties and recognizing that. So it's up to the Plan Commission how you want to fill that. But you would need a nomination, and there would have to be a vote for the appointment.
Okay. Commissioners, are there any questions, concerns with that? I think Carrie made it pretty clear. I hope you followed it. We really haven't recognized it in the past. We just assumed it as Doug's duty. But again, I guess we've never technically recognized it. So are there any questions? Okay, are there any nominations for the woman that gave such a great explanation and volunteered for the duties?
I'll nominate Carrie as secretary.
Second,
Is
Is that a second, Fred?
yes, it is.
All right, we have a nomination and a second. Are there any other nominations? We'll make one more call. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, we'll close the nominations and we'll go on to a roll call vote. If you would, please, Christina.
Hannah, I.
Sullivan, aye.
Carrillo, I.
Lorick, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Aldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, I.
Well, congratulations there, Madam Secretary. You won by a landslide.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's something that I have definitely been willing to do and will continue to do. And please let me know if there's anything that I can do to improve. So if we want to move on, Mr. Mayor, minutes for December in 2 parts.
Thank you. As Carrie said, we will do 2 parts on the minutes, December 8th. If everybody take a look, there are two parcels in your package. And when you are comfortable with the first one then the first one would be for the Special Plan Commission meeting. And that occurred at 4:30 that day, 4:29 to be exact, prior to the meeting. So we have to approve those first.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of the Special Planning Commission, December 8th, 2020.
Chandler, seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, I.
Sullivan, aye.
Carrillo, I.
Lorick, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Aldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, I.
And then we have the second half of this, the 6 p.m. meeting, the 6:03 meeting, and officially called to order.
Seifert moves to approve the meeting of December 8th, 2020.
Chandler, seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, I.
Sullivan, aye.
Carrillo, I.
Lorick, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Aldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, I.
Thank you all. That will get us to significant common council actions. Carrie?
There were no common council actions as there were no, well, there was a meeting in December, but there were no plan commission items on that agenda, and there was no meeting last week.
Thank you very much, Carrie. That'll get us into new business, item 5A, and that is a minor land division. Review a certified survey map for the properties at 9005 and 9010 South 11th Street. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The application before you is a minor land division. It's also a certified survey map. It's to combine the two properties that had been divided back in, I believe, 2014, 2015, something like that. The current zoning is RS3. These are single-family residential parcels. And there is currently a single-family residence under construction on the parcel at 9005 South 11th Avenue. So that's, if you can see my cursor, the smaller of the two. They're owned by the same person. So we are talking about a landowner instituted request, and there's nothing in terms of land sales that would be affected by it. What we're looking at right now is the proposed map itself, showing the wetland areas that have been delineated as of 2015. There is one We Energies easement that is on that south side of the home that is under construction. You can kind of get an idea of why the two properties have been proposed to be combined. Quite extensive wetlands on the property. There are certain pockets that would allow for additional structures to be placed on the property should that happen. Accessory structures, what have you. That would go through the normal permitting process. It wouldn't necessarily need to come back before the Plan Commission, but this is giving you an idea of where those properties or where those potential pockets of development could be. Again, combining it for one single family residential lot. As part of the review, there were a couple of things that that staff had requested, and they have been incorporated. If you'll see right up here where my cursor is on the very northeast corner, there's a small portion that actually fronts on a frontage road for Chicago Road, and there's no access that will be allowed there. So that you can't really see the note on here, but it does indicate that there will be no additional access to Chicago Road. One final request, and that is for any unused laterals from the division of the property prior be abandoned at the main. So with that, there is a suggested motion for approval with the traditional condition on here for Plan Commission consideration. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Kevin, is the applicant or anybody wishing to speak on this item with us?
We do have the property owner as well as a neighbor that raised their hand to speak.
We will allow them first, and if we can take care of their questions on the back end, that'd be great.
Sure. All right, first up, Lisa Johnson. Lisa, you should be able to speak. You'll have to unmute yourself.
I'm wondering about the property being wetlands and the properties that he's looking to put on this. It's been wetlands for how many years?
Ma'am?
Our neighbor 2 doors down always get their basement flooded where he's building the house right behind them.
Ma'am, if I can get you to state your name and address for the record.
Lisa Johnson, 9036 South Carrollton Drive, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, 53154.
So would you be speaking about a person who's in lot 5?
Turn your volume up.
At least I'm assuming that.
Okay, did you hear me?
No, other than the person directly behind the house under construction floods, or you're directly behind the person?
No, okay, so that has been wetlands for how many years? And all of a sudden we got okay to build 2 houses on that property. The neighbor 2 doors to our north has always gotten their basement flooded, and that's right where the house is being built. I don't, how could this not be a problem with these homes?
Well, it's my understanding that this is a minor land division combining the properties, so I don't see another home going in. It would be, if anything, an accessory building in non-wetlands, which would be, if my directions are correct, to the east. Am I right with that? Anybody?
Mr. Mayor, this is Carrie. There is
Yeah.
one single-family residence that's under construction. If you can see where I've kind of circled it in orange, that's in a pocket
Correct.
in between wetlands. There were wetlands that were identified as part of delineation and on-site delineation in 2015. That has been shown on the map. There was
And does he
a
have a plan? Oh, go ahead, sorry.
certified survey map that divided the property in two single-family residential lots back in, I believe it was somewhere between 2013 and 2015. I can't recall off the top of my head. I think it was 2014. So what this is doing is actually combining those back into one lot for one single-family residence.
Gotcha.
That's the one that's under construction. So the only other things that would be allowed to be constructed on this property would be accessory structures in conformance with code requirements and outside of the wetland areas. So we're talking about sheds, possibly a detached garage if there isn't a garage on the property as part of the home construction. Those would be the only things that would be allowed, again, outside of wetland areas. The landowner is aware of those restrictions. So, you know, those are the things that are being proposed here, but this is to combine the properties into one.
So Lisa, just to be clear, there would be no more homes being built on this property per se. Other than possibly an accessory building, as Carrie indicated. When this, you know, I kind of remember this when this came through. It was an odd lot, and they wanted to squeeze in here. They really had to work around these wetlands. I'm sure some engineering went into this, and hopefully the addition of the house didn't create a bigger problem onto the subdivision. Does anybody remember this? Was anybody with us back then? As far as Carrie said, this would go back to 14, maybe 15.
Mr. Mayor, nothing had been constructed on the property until the house that is under construction now, which is
Oh,
being built
yeah,
by
it
the
wouldn't
current
even have
land-
been there. So
No,
they-
this is under construction.
Yeah.
This is the current landowner. The prior landowners had been the ones who divided the property, but they never constructed.
Okay. I
So
thought it was
this-
those that divided. I didn't realize it changed hands. Okay.
No, so this is the house that's under construction by the current landowner.
Okay. Okay. I don't know if Lisa, did we answer your questions? All right.
Mr. Mayor, it looks like Lisa got disconnected.
Okay. Maybe she'll be back. Would the property owner like to speak, Kevin, or they just want to wait on questions from the commission?
The property owner is raising their hand, and we have two call-in as well that are
Oh,
raising their
okay.
hand.
Put them through then.
Which one would you like first, the two callers or the owner?
How about the callers and let the owner answer the questions?
Okay. So caller with a phone number ending in 651, you should be able to speak. You'll have to hit *6 to unmute yourself. Again, oh, there you go. You should be
Hello.
able to speak. We'll need your name and address for the record.
William Seaman, 3570 East American Avenue. I am the homeowner south of the subjected properties.
Okay. I think I got that. Go ahead.
My concern is my property line, the egress, the wetlands that might be hindered by this landowner, and building of homes. I know other people are concerned about flooding, and I am also, because my land is abutting this land. And I know there were certain other property owners that got away with getting rid of the Conservancy. And I'd like to have the Conservancy maintained by the DNR and also Oak Creek.
Okay, so you're to the south of this. Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, but by combining this, he actually puts the landowner puts himself in a position where they cannot have another single family residence on this lot because only one's allowed per lot. Am I correct in that? With
That is
current ordinance?
correct. Under current code, that is correct. And the wetlands are not being amended and they are not being filled. In fact, the construction is happening between the wetlands that have been delineated by sewer pack in conformance with DNR regulations. So the wetlands themselves will not change.
Awesome. Thank you.
That answer your question, William?
Yes, and I'm just concerned about my lot line, that I don't want disturbed by my lot line because I have a buffer zone between my lot and also this proposed lot.
Okay. And again, I'm not an expert, but when they do these CSMs, these certified survey maps, a surveyor does come out and reestablishes them lot lines, and they should be accurate.
Okay.
Okay. Great.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, William.
So you're saying there's only going to be one home built on this lot?
That would be true. That's my understanding. And if I'm wrong, staff, correct me.
No, combining the lots is for one single family residence currently under construction. Again, no disturbance to the wetlands.
And that's on the location map?
Yes, the home under construction is actually in that top left in between the two wetlands that are there. They're kind of nestled in between the wetlands and just north of the utility easement that's shown on the certified survey map. So in the northwest corner, essentially.
So just east of the cul-de-sac?
Carrie, can you use your cursor and Carrie,
I'm on the phone. I'm not online. Sorry.
It would be just slightly
west.
It would be just a little southwest of the cul-de-sac is where the home sits.
Okay. Well, the picture I have is east of the cul-de-sac.
If it's transposed, it would be the exact opposite. The home under construction, I don't know if you can see it, but in the Rowan Estates edition, it's kind of abuts lots 5. If you can see that.
Okay. Well,
if it's under
again, my concern,
shouldn't they be able to tell where it's at, the house that's being built?
Yeah, you should have a pretty good view of it being built.
No, there's too much land between mine and theirs.
Okay.
Too many trees.
Okay. Well, but between...
I mean, check it out if it went for a drive, but I guess I will, just to make sure. I'm just concerned about my lot line. That's all I'm concerned about.
Sure, understandably. You know, I would guess it's a good 300 feet from your lot line. That's just an estimation on my part.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Okay, William, thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin, next caller, please.
All right, next caller with a phone number ending in 430. You'll have to hit *6 to unmute yourself, and then we'll need your name and address for the record.
Hello.
All right, and then name and address for the record.
Okay, Don Hecker, 9044 South Carrollton Drive, Oak Creek.
Okay, go ahead, Don.
Okay, my question is, I have lived here for 30 years. 2 previous owners had owned that land that wanted to build houses there, and they were told they could not because it was considered a wetland. Now, why is it with this owner, he was permitted permission to build when the other two were not.
My guess would be, Don, it depends where they placed the home on the lot and how they delineated the wetlands and where they wanted the home to be. Carrie,
Well,
your
talk-
input?
The wetland delineation was conducted in 2015, so that's shown on the certified survey map. That shows pockets where the wetlands are on the property and where there are buildable areas. There is one buildable area that is currently under construction with a single family home. So they are not actually disturbing any of the wetlands, which is why they are able to construct there. This would keep it as one home and on one lot.
But the previous owners were trying to work with the city to find a place to build a home, and they said they could not. I have talked to 2 previous owners prior to this.
So the previous landowner to the current landowner and the one that they bought from were the ones who actually divided the property. And they were aware of the wetlands, and that's why the wetlands were delineated and shown on the certified survey map. This was never placed into a conservancy program. And since the wetlands that have been delineated are not being disturbed and there are areas that can be built without disturbing the wetlands, they are allowed to develop in conformance with code.
And don't agree with it because I just don't think it's right.
Well, it is their property and they had the right to develop it, yeah, with a home. So as long as they met current code and it was delineated as by the state and met our conditions, they were allowed. Why the previous ones didn't meet, I don't know. Maybe they wanted their home directly in the center of the cul-de-sac, which would have put them directly in a wetland. I don't know
No,
what
they
the
were
thinking
going to
was.
be closer to the cul-de-sac than the previous home is now.
Well, if they wanted to be closer to the cul-de-sac, there's no way they could have got a home with frontage based on what I'm looking at. Maybe that was their problem. I can't answer for them why it didn't work.
All right,
Okay, Don?
all right.
Okay, thank you. Would the property owner like to say, or do we have somebody else, Kevin, or am I jumping the gun on that?
Nope, the next one up is Gonzalo, the property owner and applicant.
Okay, if he'd like to say something.
Gonzalo, will need your
Yes,
name and address for the record too.
Good evening. This is Gonzalo Cutelane. I'm the owner of the property. My actual address now is 219 North 38th Street, Milwaukee. So I see that we have 3 questions here. I would like to answer them in order. The first one was Lisa, and she was talking about my neighbors or my future neighbors' basement flooding. I understand that that's been a problem there. This house has no basement, therefore there will not be any basement to be flooded. The second one came from William on 3570 American. I believe that he is the neighbor on the southeast corner, right where the monument is. And the house that I'm building is approximately 570 feet from his property. And there's not going to be any disturbance to any of the wetlands. It is my intention to conserve the wetlands and recover some of it. There's been some invasive species, vegetation that we're going to remedy. And we're in touch with some conservancy groups that are going to give us a hand, and they're volunteering to help us restore wetlands to as pristine condition as possible. And the last one about Don Hecker, I am not sure what previous owners before 2015 had a problem with, but the people that we bought the property from, which are the ones who paid to have the cul-de-sac made, once that was built, then there was road access to dry lands where it's possible to build. I cannot answer for what happened in the past. Right now, there is access for a driveway that's approximately 140 feet long to get into an area where there's enough space to build a house. If they have any other questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Gonzalo. At this time, if there's no other callers, Kevin, we'll go to the commission. Is there anybody in waiting?
Nope.
Okay, we'll go to the commission, starting with Christine. Anything?
No questions here. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt,
We have no questions.
Dawn,
No questions.
Greg?
No questions. I would just say it sounds like this is a better option for the neighbors that have concerns with construction, because this is limiting it down from the possibility of 2 homes down to 1. And in hearing from the property owner, it sounds like he's going to try to improve those wetlands and enter into conservancy possibly. So I have no issues with this. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Chris?
Actually, Alderman Lorik, I echo his comments.
Thanks, Chris. Don?
No questions.
Fred?
No comment.
Chauncey?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay. I have no questions either, Greg. I think you summed it up very well. So I think it'll be an improvement. And Gonzalo, thank you for putting some effort into the land in the future, and hopefully it'll pay off for you.
Thank you. Welcome. And I'm really looking forward to moving to Oak Creek.
No, well, we welcome having you. Thank you. With that said, we'll look for a motion. 5A.
Lorik will move that the Plan Commission recommend to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Gonzalo Couto Lane for the properties at 9005 and 9010 South 11th Avenue be approved with the following condition: that all technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordinate geometry corrections, and corrections required for compliance with the municipal code and Wisconsin statutes are made prior to recording.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Lorik, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Ladani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Okay, thank you very much. That will get us to 5B, but Carrie, I believe 5B has been rescheduled, correct?
That's correct. At the request of the applicant, they've asked for this to be rescheduled to another time. They had prematurely submitted. They want to kind of button up their plans a little bit first.
Okay, thank you. That'll get us to 5C, and that is review a request for a conditional use permit for outdoor storage for the property at 1001 South Howell Avenue. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a request in the M1 district for outdoor storage of crates that will contain parts and products for Komatsu. Part of the project includes adding about 2.5 acres of asphalt to the southwest corner to store those crates. And the crates themselves are in several sizes, 3x4, 4x5, and a little bit larger than that. The proposal would have them stacked to a height of about 6 to 7 feet. We've not received a number for the maximum number of crates that could be stored in this area, but it's quite an extensive area. And these would be separated by 12-foot wide aisles. There is an existing 6-foot tall chain link security fence. There's barbed wire on top that surrounds the property. It's been there for quite a while. Right now, we don't have any detailed landscaping or lighting plans. The applicant wished to proceed with obtaining conditional use permit approval first before investing in the detailed plans. However, with regard to the extent of the asphalt that is being proposed, that necessitates underground stormwater detention. Those plans are currently being drawn up and will continue to be refined should this be recommended for approval. There's an existing stormwater pond for the property, but this would require additional detention. What we're looking at right now is where the, here we go, on the west side, this is where the underground detention is proposed. Let's see if I can circle that for everybody right in here. The green line that is on the west and south here, that's indicating a 6-foot wide grass strip in between the existing fence and the asphalt that's being proposed for the crates. And we'll get into that discussion in a little while, but I wanted to draw your attention to that so that you are aware there is still a requirement for a 5-foot setback for pavement on properties, and this meets that requirement. There we go. As was mentioned in the staff report, there are several concerns that we have been discussing internally. The extent of the outdoor storage is about 10% of the overall site. And that would be something where staff would then be looking for, in addition to the building, we would support in addition to accommodate interior storage of those crates as a preference to the outdoor storage that's being presented. There's no physical delineator that has been identified on the plan. What we have received from the applicant is assurance that the aisles would be clearly delineated with painting and striping. However, that does nothing to prevent crates from being inadvertently placed on that grass strip or moving outside of these asphalt areas and being stored elsewhere on the property. There's no curbing that's being proposed or anything physical on the property that would prevent these crates from being stored outside of this proposed asphalt area. The aisles have to be clear for emergency services. Right now, they're proposing 12 feet in between the crate aisles, but again, they are not being striped for these individual crates or stacked crates. It's just the aisles that are going to be kind of painted as one big area. We don't know what's going to be stored in the crates specifically. We don't necessarily need to know, you know, this crate has this particular part in it. However, we do need to be careful when it comes to storage of flammable materials. That would be prohibited if recommended for approval. There would also be something about any kind of hazardous materials along with the flammable materials being prohibited. And we would also, if this was recommended for approval, include in the conditions and restrictions a prohibition on storing anything that is not related to the business. So it would be strictly for the storage of these crates. They've been proposed to be stacked above the height of the existing fence. Now, again, that fence is 6 feet tall, and these crates would be stacked in the proposal to 6 or 7 feet. And I want to draw the Plan Commission's attention to that top image on the screen right now. This is an existing site in Milwaukee. They do stack the crates, and these crates are stacked above the fence. And while we would be restricting, if this were to be recommended for approval, that the crates not be stacked to a height that you could see it above the fence line, it would be something that would be strictly enforced so that we do not have this type of situation in their other location where you can clearly see that these crates are stacked well above the height, the maximum height of that fence. Landscaping that would be required per code would also be included in the conditions and restrictions. We do have a bit of a concern for the maintenance of that 6-foot grass strip that's in between the proposed crates and that existing fence. And while I brought that up to the applicant, they do have a plan for that to be included as part of their regular landscape maintenance, but it does nothing for screening. And because that fence is on the property line, there's no room for planting any kind of landscape screening on the outside of the fence. So those are some of the concerns that would have to be addressed in very strict conditions and restrictions should this be recommended for approval, not only for screening purposes, but for compliance with code. We would have to be sure that that 6-foot grass strip area is very well maintained so that we don't run afoul of the weed ordinance. Now, if I draw your attention again to that fence area that's in the image on the screen, you'll note that it includes kind of this mesh or plastic insert that we've seen proposed in some other, for some screening materials on other applications. And while the applicant has proposed either using this mesh fabric to be attached to the existing chain link fence or putting in those plastic slats, we still have concerns for use of those. We've seen that mesh fabric be disconnected from the fence. It kind of just billows, it separates, and then it just kind of ends up getting ripped down and not replaced in other instances that we've seen in the city. Same with the plastic inserts. They often break, they go missing, they never get replaced. So that does nothing for screening in the long term. We would need something that would be more of a permanent screening solution. And oftentimes those screening solutions are insufficient anyway. You can kind of see through the fence, and while that may be great for security purposes, it does nothing for actually screening that outdoor storage area. As we mentioned, lighting plans are going to be prepared in detail should this be recommended for approval. We may have some considerations for height limitations on those poles. Certainly those fixtures would have to abide by code for being directed downward, shielded, and as we've seen in other applications where we are concerned about lighting, we are going to be recommending that those light fixtures be regulated to a maximum of 3,500 kelvins as we've recommended in other conditional use permit situations. And finally, continuing on with that Milwaukee site, you'll see the aerial on the bottom on the screen. While this isn't in the exact same area as those stacked crates, it's on the opposite end of the site, you do see how they are proposing those painted areas for storage. Unfortunately on this site, and that's not to say that the same thing would happen on the Oak Creek site, you can see that storage is happening outside of those painted lines. So staff continues to have concerns for just lines delineating where those crates could be stored based on the fact that people can be fallible. They move things wherever they need them to be moved, and those crates could end up going outside of their designated areas if there's no physical barrier to prevent it from happening. So there's two options that have been presented for Plan Commission consideration. One, staff doesn't actually support this particular conditional use request for the concerns stated. If the Plan Commission concurs with staff, then what the appropriate procedure would be is to make a motion and cast a dissenting vote and state the code sections and reasons upon which the disapproval is being based. Two, if the Plan Commission wishes to recommend this for council approval, we would be preparing conditions and restrictions to address those concerns that have been raised in the staff report, along with any other recommendations that the Plan Commission would have for inclusion in those suggested conditions and restrictions, which would be prepared for the next meeting on January 26th. In that case, you would recommend approval of the motion and you would vote in the affirmative. The motion for consideration is now on the screen. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Carrie. Kevin, is there anybody wishing to speak before we go to the commission?
Sure. We have a neighbor that signed up, so we'll have them speak first. Terry, you should be able to unmute yourself. No, we'll need your name and address for the record.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, my name's Terry Baker. My address is 10015 South Cindy Lane, directly across from the facility itself. My initial concern was I didn't know what was going to be stored there. It could have been cranes or something that was sticking up in the air. I see their building every day. It seems to me that the location that's proposed for the storage is not going to be a detriment. When I look out there, I'm not going to really see it. If it's on the southwest corner, And if it's screened, I don't have an issue with that then. My main concern was what was going to be proposed for the storage. What were they going to be storing on that property?
Parts, they're in the mining business. I would imagine it has something to do with mining parts, large equipment parts.
And that's absolutely fine. I just didn't know if it was going to be completed machines, cranes, something that was going to be, be an eyesore to look at.
Again, we don't know, do we? There's supposed to be crates, but we don't
Mr. Mayor?
we don't really know the dimensions.
Mr. Mayor, this is Carrie. The request would be restricted to those crates. So there would be no recommendation from staff to allow for anything outside of those crates. Any parts or equipment would not be allowed to be stored in that same area. So whether the crates are filled with, part A or part B is somewhat irrelevant as long as it doesn't have any hazardous or flammable materials involved. What would be visible in theory would be those crates themselves, but we would be requiring screening for those as well.
Agreed. Do they limit the height and size of the crates?
We can limit the height that they would be stacked or the
But
height
can we
at which
limit
they
the
would
size
be
of the crate?
visible.
So I mean, what happens if you stack on top of 5-foot crate, a 10-foot crate?
There would be a height limitation. We would not allow for any kind of stacking such that the crates would be visible above the fence line. It doesn't matter how big they end up being, we would restrict them to a height below the 6-foot fence.
They didn't do a very good job in Milwaukee with it. I don't know why it would change in Oak Creek, but go ahead, Carrie, if there's anything else.
No, sir.
Okay. Is that it, Terry?
Yeah, that's it. That was just, I really wanted to find out what besides crates, if there was anything else that they planned on storing there. And I don't have an issue with the crates and if it's going to be screened and, kept below the fence line.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Next, Kevin, anyone else?
Sure. Next up, we'll do Doug Komatsu, GM. Doug, you should be able to unmute yourself and we'll need your name and address for the record.
Good evening. So Doug Dearborn, the General Manager of Distribution and Logistics for Komatsu. Address is W7702 Highway 18, Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. So just to, again, give a little bit of maybe summary for what your questions have been so far. We've been obviously at Oak Creek there for 6 to 7 years. We believe that this is an expansion development for not only Komatsu, but also Oak Creek. We believe we can definitely do this in a very aesthetically pleasing manner, as well as our social responsibility. There is no hazardous material or flammable materials. This is literally, I'm going to say, parts in crates, metal parts, gears, shaft, pinions, metal things that we package up and we do ship around the world. So it will not be finished machines. It will not be big, ugly, unsightly things outside. Some of the pictures you do see at Milwaukee, not all of that will be going to Oak Creek. So you definitely have a legitimate concern there. The big stuff, we physically will not be able to handle at Oak Creek. So that big stuff still remains in Milwaukee and actually at our new facility being built at South Harbor. So agreed with your concerns on the size and the contingencies is really what we're looking for. So what are the conditions in which we could operate? Agree with the height, agree with some landscaping conditions, definitely the screening and the fencing. If there's different fencing, different lighting, those are the contingencies that we're actually looking for from you guys, either today or therefore in the future. So there are a couple other individuals on the call today from the engineering perspective of what we're looking to accomplish, as well as the operations that we are looking to accomplish. But yeah, we're looking to work with the city of Oak Creek on what can we do to continue our development and expansion, quite honestly, of Komatsu in the city of Oak Creek.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate that. Is there anybody else from your team that would like to speak prior to going to commission? Because I don't know if we have any other neighbors or residents, should I say.
Mr. Mayor, there are no other neighbors, but there are, their project engineer, Kevin, does have his hand raised.
Oh, okay. Please put Kevin through.
Kevin, you should be able to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself, and then we'll need your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Risch. I reside at 8308 47th Avenue, Kenosha, Wisconsin, 53142. And again, my name is Kevin Risch. I'm a senior project engineer with Clark Dietz Incorporated, and I will be representing the site owner as well as their tenant, Komatsu, for the design of this project. And on the call with me, you already heard from Doug, the general site manager. Chris Farmer is also on the call. He's the operations manager. And then Fong Wen is going to be the project site manager for the construction of this. I'd just like to just do a little summary if that's okay. And then could I just touch upon each of the concerns that Carrie brought forth in her letter to the commission?
Yes, go ahead, Kevin.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Komatsu operations at this site includes 3 full-time shifts of approximately 55 persons per shift for a total of about 165 employees. It's estimated that their annual revenue for this particular site is in the hundreds of millions of dollars annually. The primary purpose of this expansion project is to allow Komatsu to consolidate its distribution capacity within the city of Oak Creek due to some closures and whatnot in the Milwaukee area. Space limitations within the existing building have led to the request for outdoor storage based on economic considerations. Before I begin, I'd like the Plan Commission members to be aware that our intent is to provide all the plan documents that Carrie already alluded to, including the details, including paving, pavement marking plan, typical sections, electrical, lighting, photometrics, landscaping, together with all the planting details, as well as erosion control. We also plan on providing full submittal for stormwater management controls, the report that goes along with that, calculations, as well as any stormwater details, and as Carrie already alluded to, the storage requirement for offsite discharge. Currently, a good portion of the site drains off the site in the northwest corner via underground pipe. It's a 24-inch pipe that actually drains off site. And our intent is to capture that and then allow for the peak discharge requirements that's within the New York City ordinance prior to discharging out of the underground storage reservoir. That'll also satisfy TSS reductions. That's also part of your criteria. The reason that we weren't providing all these ahead of time, and Terry, I'm sorry, but it was already mentioned that we didn't want to expend all the engineering time putting together all these details if it wasn't going to be favorable to the commission. So I appreciate your staff's willingness to at least go on a concept level, and she did a great job of presenting the facts. Just so you know, we actually met with Alderman Ken Guile from District 5 there yesterday on site to go over any concerns that he has with the neighboring properties, and we're gonna certainly look to satisfy any of those concerns as well as staff's concerns. My plan is to just briefly go over the staff concerns, so I'm just going to go to the very first one. The extent of outdoor storage area being approximately 10% of the size of the parcel itself. And then the staff obviously has concerns about going into the building. We understand that this is a large expansion area of the pavement surface. However, it is necessary for the merger of this Milwaukee facility and to try to maintain Komatsu on this the options of expanding the building as recommended by staff would have a much greater impact financially, not only from just the building structure itself, but due to internal impact of operations and having to alter their entire footprint inside, and then impacting the day-to-day business would have some financial implications to that end. In the end, this proposal is still going to adhere to the minimum green space per your code requirements, which is 30%. And right now, with this addition, we're still going to be above that. We're going to still be at above 33% of the project site area. The next concern, there are no physical delineators or storage areas. We didn't provide that as part of the submittal. And again, I thank you for your patience. In the end, we did have discussions with the owner as well as the tenant. And we agreed to place a 6-foot high curb barrier around the outer boundaries of the asphalt near the fence because of the concern of possibly going into that grassy area or whatever we plan on doing landscaping wise there. And then this will eliminate that intrusion. The final plans will highlight and dimension the forklift driving lanes as well as the storage areas. The total number of crates is a variable due to the project, the product sizes, longer crates versus shorter versus the heights. They're all variable. So as long as we have the restrictions that will be outlined in the covenants and restrictions, that's what the Komatsu will adhere to. And they're looking for permission to stack crates, up to 6 to 7 feet. And I'll go into more details down below with this the shielding of seeing in the site. So I was told, and I'm not sure if this can be restricted, but some of the crates, because it is mining, there are some crates that could get as wide as 12 feet. But I was told that it's probably 1 in every 200 crates. And they're not there for long periods of time because they're shipping them around the country. The next bullet, staff had not been provided details for the parts. And I think Doug just did a good job of explaining the type of items that go into those projects. So I won't go into details on that. And your covenants restrictions will be met of not having flammable materials and whatnot, or bolts or anything outside in the storage area. It's just the crates. The next bullet, crates are proposed to be stacked or exceeding the height of the existing security fence. Should the proposal be recommended for approval, crates will not be allowed. I just want to add one thing on this. We certainly recognize that some of the items could be up to 12 feet, so we look for maybe some exceptions. But once I address this next concern, maybe you might see a better suit for that. But the landscaping screening, we did have some discussions with the owner as well as Komatsu regarding the screening and the concerns with that material. And with that, we've agreed that instead of the fence material or instead of the meshing, that we would like to proceed with a vegetation type screen, which would include like arborvitae trees or any other trees that's acceptable through your ordinance. That will allow, at least as the trees mature, they will provide an adequate screening so you can't even see onto the property. We'll look at putting those in close proximity so that as they mature, they're going to be pretty much occupying the spaces that are there today. And then that would eliminate the need to put in any type of meshing or slants in the fence. So we'd be looking to cover any areas that's deemed necessary along the property, whether it's along the south property line, behind the medical center there, and FedEx. I don't know if there's going to be any requirements on the west side, since that's a conservancy area from the west all the way to the railroad. But then also on the end, we'd look to be doing some landscaping along the north property line there, where the pond is going to go to shelter the residential area, as well as putting some trees and whatnot over by Howell Avenue along that north or that south property line there to shelter anything that's stored in that area. The next item was the lighting. We had full intention on putting together a full lighting plan with photometrics. I'm not sure how the 3500 Kelvin works with the existing lighting, but we'll certainly work with the staff to make sure that we're not exceeding the criteria, put candles on the pavement and put shelters or shields on the fixtures from spilling over property lines. We'll satisfy the electrical lighting code as well as whatever you guys have internal on your ordinance. I guess I don't want to really talk about the Milwaukee area because they may have different restrictions or requirements that Oak Creek has. So we would look to satisfy Oak Creek concerns as well as the aldermanic concerns on the neighboring properties. So I'm not getting, I don't even want to look at that. I see the concerns that were illustrated in the photos, and Komatsu's assured me that they're going to. I mean, if you look at their site, they take pride in their property. It's manicured. It's green. They take care of the pond up front. I don't see that changing with the addition of this asphalt area. So we understand that there was a lot of concerns, but we want to position ourselves, so that we're satisfying all concerns. We don't want a product or an end product that's not going to be satisfactory to the city or the commission. So we're just letting you know that we're going to do whatever it takes to put together a plan prior to pulling out any permits or even applying for permits until staff is satisfactory. So with that, I'd like to just maybe close by offering up and allowing Chris Farmer, the operations manager, to maybe speak about this site and discuss Komatsu's strong desire to remain part of Oak Creek community and what it will mean if Komatsu if the decision not to approve the outdoor storage site does not meet your satisfaction. So I thank you for the time. I'll turn it over to.
Okay, thank you very much. Kevin, is there anybody else before the commission? I open it up.
We have Chris Farmer with Komatsu who just raised his hand.
Okay, Chris.
Chris, you should be able to unmute yourself. We'll need your name and address for the record.
My name is Christopher Farmer. Address is 2437 Mariah Lane, Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. I guess at first note, I just want to thank the commission for taking time to review, amend, and then consider Komatsu's plan for expansion, and really our desire to keep our distribution network in greater Milwaukee and specifically Oak Creek. We're willing to propose any considerations, any contingencies to our leadership that drive value to the surrounding community, whether it's lighting, whether it's screening, whatever those contingencies might be in order to meet the requirements of the city, and really with the intent of keeping the 165 jobs, in Oak Creek, as well as our distribution footprint. We are a global distribution center, meaning we're pulling in material from all over North America and then shipping it throughout all the continents. We really want to remain in Oak Creek. We feel that we've been a good corporate citizen. We want to continue and maintain that relationship, and are actually looking forward to seeing if any of these contingencies or these conditions can be met in order to remain where we are. Really, in closing, we're hoping to appeal to both the business acumen of the Planning Commission, and then also the subsequent interest of both Komatsu and Oak Creek as it applies to keeping work local. This project is in conjunction with the plans to rebuild or to build a brand new facility, $300 million facility that's downtown or in the Harbor District. So in lieu of that, that's what's necessitating this move of some of that material from the National Labs site down to the MDC. So Komatsu obviously has demonstrated a large commitment to the city of Milwaukee. We want to provide the same level of commitment to the city of Oak Creek with, from a distribution perspective. And certainly we're hoping, to engender those relationships and gain the approval, through whatever means necessary. Compliance, we are not concerned with that. Myself and Doug, our new management team, I came under Doug's leadership back in February. We've seen nothing short of a transformation in the Oak Creek facility, and look forward to maintaining that standard that we've set moving forward. In closing, I guess we would like to offer an open invitation, to the Planning Commission to come and visit the facility. If there's any trepidation, if there's any concern about how we manage or what the exterior would look like, perhaps it might be a good idea to come see and witness the inside, for yourselves. And no worries, no pressures either way. But we're a transparent entity, and we definitely would like to invite that if that would help gain any confidence in our intent to maintain whatever level or criteria that you guys set before us in order to move forward with this project.
Great. Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate that. Kevin, anybody else ring in there? If not, we'll go to commission.
Nope, you're good to continue on the commission.
Okay. This time we'll start from my right. Commissioner Chandler, you want to start us off?
Surely.
Questions, comments?
I do have a couple questions for the applicants. So the way that I understand this, capacity is moving from the Milwaukee facility. And because of that, this storage is needed. So will this storage area only include items from the Milwaukee facility, or it would also include storage for Oak Creek facility as well?
I can answer that. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Yes, you are. Is
Okay.
that Chris?
Yes, it'll be a combination of both the Milwaukee facility, the Milwaukee facility, which will in the future will be South Harbor, and then the current product that we keep at the MDC at this point. One of the things I can tell you is that kind of in response to the concern of regarding the crates at National Ave, we are reducing the total amount of parts that will be manufactured at South Harbor by a factor of 40%. So we will be seeing a less significant amount of parts that will be coming through. However, there still will be parts that we'll have to facilitate the movement for and on behalf of. So with that being said, there's going to be parts that will be coming here that are finished, that will be created, that will, we will need to provide storage for that will be coming from the South Harbor facility.
So is this only temporary?
No, this would be, for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
The intent, I understand where the question is coming. The intent is to make essentially the MDC is what we call it, our distribution center, really the central hub for all of distribution, so that we're not distributing from both locations. We're distributing, around the globe from strictly the MDC as much as we can control that.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe it'd help answer that just a little bit more is about 80% of what we're doing at National Avenue, we would like to move to the MDC. 20% will go to our new facility there at South Harbor. And that's going to be that real big stuff that we physically cannot handle, nor should we handle at Oak Creek. In what you mentioned there was also an important point is this is not like we bring stuff there and store it for 5 years. This is, we bring stuff in, we consolidate it, and we ship it back out. So this isn't intended to be bring stuff in, store it for 5 years. This is intended to bring it in, consolidate it with some other material basically. And when we ship our equipment, it's really big, and we ship literally 6 semi-loads at a time out the door. So it's meant to be a temporary staging area as a continuous operation though. So like Chris said, this isn't just a one-time event, it is continuous operations. But it comes in, it consolidates on semis, and basically leaves the facility, if that helps explain that.
Yes, it does. Thank you. My next question is in regards to the material that will be stored. How are you going to contain it to the area? We saw the paint marks, but how can you guarantee that for access to the facility for other vehicles, they would be able to get through and all the materials are in a specific defined area?
From an
Yeah, Chris, why don't
operation,
you go ahead and answer that?
yeah, sure. Thanks, Doug. From an operations perspective, I mean, we are a success facility, and where we are not, we're moving very quickly in that direction, right? So discipline lines are a huge part of our process input. So we've worked, very intently over the last year, both here and at National Lab to create that level of discipline. And essentially at this point, once we develop those kind of process-driven inputs and we move away from people-driven inputs that typically we're finding that our ability to control and sustain those changes over time is improved drastically. So as far as keeping things inside of the discipline lines and the corresponding aisles, where they go, I mean, the success of our business is strictly tied to how disciplined we run and move material. Otherwise, it results in lost material, misshipped material, all those things that cost the company money. So we have our own incentive from a cost perspective to make sure that these guidelines, these discipline lines are strictly adhered to and followed.
And specifically, why would these items be stored on the outside versus the inside?
It's space allocation. If you come into the MDC right now, you'll find that, probably 90% of our facility is fully occupied. And we also, intend on moving a few small operations from just a packing perspective into the MDC. So it just comes down to space constraints internally.
Okay, and then another question in regards to storage. Why is it stacked so high? 6 feet, well, you actually said possibly 12 feet high.
Right, they wouldn't be stacked 12 feet high. There are just some exceptions where, some of our booms, and the larger material that we will, we may need to facilitate movement of at the MDC. It's just that's the overall size of it. We would not stack anything that high, and I'm trying to think of an example of even anything that's 12 feet high. We're just trying to provide, kind of the upper control limit on what we think the potential capacity is. And to Doug's point, these are items that once they're packed, they're gone in 2 to 3, 4 days. So it's not as though they're hanging around for a long period of time.
So once again, the 12 feet high is just a possibility. It's not the norm. Am I?
That is correct. That's the exception, definitely not the rule.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it, Chauncey?
Yes.
Okay, Fred?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for the applicant. What is the inventory level that you maintain out in your storage area? Does that fluctuate every day, or is it somewhat fixed?
Yeah, Chris, maybe I can help answer that one. So
Yeah,
it's
sure.
a good question. I assume you're talking more physical space more than you are dollars, but it is a variable. Let's call it what it is. The plan that we've laid out there is kind of the maximum plan, right? You don't want to plan minimally, so you got to plan for the worst case scenario, business levels, boom, right? And that's where we really don't mind operating sometimes, but it will fluctuate based on industry activity, right? So we could give you a firmer number. We don't have that on top of our head, but each machine we ship usually takes about 6 semis, and it's usually about 100 crates, and we ship about 6 to 8 machines a year. So I'm going to say at any given time, I would expect about 100 crates. So, I mean, that's definitely a rough estimate based on going in, coming out. And like Chris said, it's not meant to be there for very long. It's consolidate and go away. That's how we make money, right? So it could vary between, let's just say 100 to maybe a worst case would be maybe 300 if, again, the business environment got to that level, which we're just not quite there in this economy.
Okay, the next question, your containers, are they enclosed when they're outside or are they open?
Yep, so the crates they're going to be closed. So a little bit of what the other question was, This material goes international, goes on really big barges, really big boats. So it is packed for export packing, which means it's very well protected in like shrink wrap inside the crates. So those crates will be full crates. They're not going to be a bunch of pieces laying around.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Is that it, Fred?
That's it.
Okay, Don?
I guess my question maybe would be more for Carrie. So this is just for the permit. Would they have to come back for the conditions on such things like fencing, lighting, those sorts of things?
So if this is recommended for council approval, then we would have draft conditions and restrictions for plan commission review at the January 26th meeting. That would incorporate all of the discussion items that we're talking about right now. It would incorporate conditions and restrictions to address the staff concerns and incorporate some of the things that I'm hearing the representatives from Komatsu are also willing to provide us. So yes, and then that full package would go for a hearing before Common Council.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Hey, Don, thanks. Chris?
You know, Komatsu has been a really great corporate citizen and partner, and it's really valiant of them to try to bring more business to Oak Creek, and I applaud them. But right now, I just have a hard time with this project, and specifically the 10% that Carrie alluded to. The just all of this being outside is just it to me. I think of it as a big eyesore, and I just don't know how it's going to impact, you know, the neighbors and what people are going to think. The other thing is that I had a question if this impacts the fire department. Has anyone from the fire department chimed in on any concerns from staff's perspective, or have you heard? Maybe Carrie, could you answer?
Mike's on the call.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I did work with the planning previously. You know, we discussed some of the issues I think Carrie alluded to and illustrated some of the issues. The research that we really looked at was, you know, exterior storage as it relates to pallet storage. So it really doesn't translate into the crate storage per code. You know, the other concerns that were vetted out was the combustibility of what's stored in the crate. So it appears to be a non-combustible product. And the other things were just mostly how the plan is really applied, as long as though those units aren't stored adjacent to the structure. You know, those would be a concern. Again, those are crate storage. It is a wood box, and if those storage items were placed outside of where they're supposed to be stored, you know, then, you know, we probably would have some issues. But other than anything that we already talked about or that Carrie highlighted, really by code, you know, there's nothing that really stands out for fire suppression. Any other questions, or did that answer, I think, what you're...
Thanks, Chief. Really, then the only other thing is that, you know, we have been talking and working on as a plan commission, you know, our updated codes and all that stuff. So how does this all fit into there, and is it going to be legit? So, but that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Greg?
I don't have any additional questions and concerns. I think they were all pretty much brought up and spoken to. I agree with Alderman Guzikowski that they seem to be a great corporate partner here in Oak Creek, and I would really like to be able to work with them to come to a mutual agreement here. I do have concerns with I guess the look of that, but if something can be done to limit the visibility, whether it's different fencing, higher fencing, lower piles, I would support it at that point. So nothing additional though. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Dawn?
All my questions have been asked and answered. Thank you.
Matt?
I guess, going over this, a lot of our concerns seem like they've been spoken to from the applicant, which I appreciate. The biggest one I see and one that we've considered or not considered, I guess, is cost effective. Is that something that we're concerned of as a community, that, hey, we're just gonna go out and throw additional storage out with asphalt because it's the most cost effective point? I mean, to me, I guess that becomes an issue for me in speaking of, I could do the most cost effective thing in my backyard, but is that the best? Is that the best for the neighborhood? Is that the best for meeting code requirements and odds and ends there? So that's one of my major concerns. Obviously stormwater, that's something they spoke to, and we wouldn't be able really to deal with that until we got to the plan point. But and I understand that when they talk about building expansion, that there could be interruption to operations, but you know what? A lot of other companies expand constantly, and they find ways to make it work. Stella and Chewy's is a great example. And they're doubling the size of their facility. They manufacture actually right there. They're still able to function. So it's a matter of what's best, where it meets our code, and if it's being considered properly as far as the effect for the city. So other than that, I guess we'll leave it to the commission to make those decisions, but that's my thought.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Christine?
All my questions and concerns have been addressed, so I have nothing further. Thank you.
Okay, guess I kind of get to go. Looking at the plan, I understand the logistics of it. I actually go by your plant just about every day there on 39th Street. Pretty familiar with your products. These are wooden crates. I mean, just what you see in the pictures, they're being shipped worldwide. If I got this right, you're proposing to put the impervious area and the additional asphalt on the west side of the building and the south side of the building, and all the crates would be stored there, correct? We're talking the Oak Creek location.
Yes, that is correct. Largely, they would be stored on the west and that southwest side, and then staged for shipping on the most, I guess if you want to call it the southeast portion of that southern side.
Okay, that helps. Directly to the west of Komatsu, looking at page, at the location map, it appears that the land goes straight back to the railroad tracks. So to the west, I mean, it's a good option to store back there. We still want it properly screened and what have you. Going to the south directly, we have the corner of FedEx, if I'm reading this correctly, and G Medical. Once again, all M1 delineations. I don't have issue there. What I really want to protect is the neighborhood to the north. We have opportunities to do things to better that. I really have concern with the lights, gentlemen. I can tell you that now. When the FedEx facility came in, the subdivision to the north of you had issues at FedEx with the lighting. So the lighting would be very much a concern. Stormwater, Matt kind of touched on it. Adding the impervious pavement, I really hate to give the go ahead with let's see what happens once we figure it out. I'd rather know up front what the plan is, along with the landscape plan. As Greg said, can we possibly get the fences higher? Maybe I don't know if barbed wire is necessary at 6 foot. You put it at 8 without barbed wire. I'm not an expert that way. I couldn't even tell you how our code goes or what's needed. I believe it was Kevin talked about enhanced landscaping for more vegetation, which I think would be a positive to have more green. to have more plants. I agree. I'd like to work at the plan and move it along, but boy, I got a ton of questions on it. And again, I'm really not opposed. These things are going to come in and out. I'm kind of familiar with the operation. I kind of get it. As long as they ain't up front on Howell Avenue, we are putting them, you know, either facing M1 districts or facing nothing back there. And I guess Carrie or Doug, that's the property directly to the west of Komatsu. Is that owned by the building owner? That's landlocked now? That can't be built, or this FedEx, it doesn't look like a property line for them, so.
Mayor, this is Carrie.
Yes.
That's actually county-owned property.
That is county-owned property. So
Yeah,
Correct.
just Mayor, Commission members, that property was actually part of the land deal between the county and the Ryan Business Park. So that is in conservancy, that will remain in conservancy.
we're not too worried about people getting upset looking at the crates from the west.
Probably not.
Probably not. On the north end, and I mean, I'm just looking at a drawing. What's the best option to protect that Fairfield neighborhood? I guess that's my goal. How do we make it work with those neighbors?
I think we could raise a berm. We talked with this with the design engineer as well, but you know, adding a berm, you know, in that area, and then, you know, raise vegetation. The line of sight in the summertime, there are some tall trees in that area. It's not too bad. In the wintertime, you know, full transparency, yeah, you'll probably see some potential light pollution, but we could protect that, you know, with the type of trees or vegetation that we installed there. That's kind of what was proposed, or at least spoken about yesterday. And then also doing the same thing or having a similar plan to run parallel to Howell Avenue, just to make sure that it can't, you know, nothing can be seen from Howell Avenue on that southeast side. So, you know, we are taking in a very strong consideration some of these line of sight issues, and then also, you know, leveraging the proper screening methodology to kind of satisfy those.
Okay, so
Chris, if I'm correct, that is already bermed and vegetated on the north side. Is that correct, from the original build site?
It is down to a point, and then it kind of recedes a little bit. So we would want to continue that berm where it's at, you know, fully to the west.
Gotcha. Thanks.
okay, and currently on the north side, looks like you got some semis, trailers queued up there.
Yes,
Is that
that's correct.
primarily what it's for?
Yeah, and you know, we're willing to, you know, like I said, we're willing to meet all conditions and contingencies that come our way to the extent that it's not cost prohibitive, because, you know, that's always a big consideration. But we've even talked about, you know, if we have to remove portions of the concrete in order to maintain a higher level of green space, you know, we're willing to have those conversations, and that would be one of the areas targeted for removal of asphalt in order to increase green space.
Okay. So, Carrie, let me make sure I'm understanding this. It's like, this is for the conditional use permit application to pass go and move on. From there, they would come back to planning with conditions and restrictions?
Yes.
Or
If
would
this
you
is
prepare-
recommended tonight for council approval, then staff would draft conditions and restrictions that would address the concerns that have been raised tonight. And those would be brought to the Plan Commission for consideration on January 26th.
And basically staff concerns, I mean, it's lengthy. But then you had some stuff highlighted in red, and a lot of it was just, I think, Komatsu testing the water before they really put a lot of assets, money into the plan going forward on stormwater, landscape, architectural drawings, and things of that nature, correct?
So yes, there may be some considerations to having the Plan Commission review those plans once they become finalized. We can talk about that as part of conditions and restrictions. It would probably be something that we would be recommending moving forward with these things, where the Plan Commission has the review authority for landscape plans for screening purposes, for lighting plans to ensure that the conditions and restrictions are being adhered to. There wouldn't be any architectural plans because they're not proposing any kind of building. And then stormwater would have to meet code requirements, excuse me.
So gentlemen, I'm glad you reached out to the alderman. I haven't had a chance to speak with him prior to the meeting. Are there any intents to maybe get his input and some of the adjacent neighbors possibly?
Yeah, he actually referenced, I think one of his friends or maybe a family member lived back there, and he spoke a little bit to it, and he had talked, somewhat about some of those concerns, and so he was taking a very close look at the potential light pollution and things of that nature. So, if we wanted to canvass them, to find out, what some more input might be, or voice of the customer per se is, we're certainly willing to go down that road.
Okay. As I say, my concern, I want to, I respect staff and I go with staff if they feel we can work with this and find something that works. Again, I'd love to sell you on just putting up an expansion of the building. You'd make this a heck of a lot easier on us all. But I don't think I'm going to get that tonight. Anyhow, I would like to just not start at a hard no and continue to have staff work on it, but yet control the process and involve the area aldermen and the neighborhood. My goal is we've been, I want to say, that neighborhood is very sensitive to what's going on to the south of them. And I want to respect that forward. So.
Dan, can I chime in for a second?
Yeah, please go ahead, Don.
I guess, again, this would be more for a question for the staff. So I kind of keep hearing a theme that they want to work with Oak Creek, meet all the conditions, as long as it's not cost prohibitive. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, and I don't know how closely you've been working with them on this project, but how do we know what that means exactly, cost prohibitive? This is a budget world, I get it. But what happens if we give this the okay, and then when it comes to conditions, we're just far apart on what needs to be done and what can afford to be done. And maybe that's where some more work needs to be done with staff to come up with a plan before we get stuck in the middle of this whole thing. I don't know if that's a possibility or not, but
I think I would agree with you, Don. And I think if we give the conditional use permit, if it doesn't meet conditions and restrictions going forward and our code, at least very minimum, but then we put conditions and restrictions, we have greater control, and we could say no at a later date. Ultimately, it's up to the council in the end, correct? Doug, Carrie?
Yeah, that's correct. And if I may, Mayor and Commissioner Aldani, I mean, we certainly as a staff appreciate being good corporate citizens, and Komatsu certainly is one of them. And we want to balance obviously the needs of their operations versus the direction that we go as a community. And so to the extent that they've offered to look at some of the operations in terms of what we can do to lessen the impact on the neighborhood, we're certainly appreciative of that, and look to move forward in that. And the things I've heard in terms of perhaps extending that berm and maybe reconfiguring some of the paved areas on the north end are hopeful from our perspective. And also what I heard is that the outdoor storage plan was really set at a maximum condition, and perhaps if we can take sharpen the pencil, so to speak, on that and find out what really could work for them in terms of their outdoor storage, and maybe peeling that back a little bit on the north end, that would go a long way towards kind of lessening the impact upon the neighborhood to the north, and something that we'd be interested in working with them on. So it sounds like that there's enough support from the commission to kind of move this forward to the next step, which is conditions and restrictions. Understanding, of course, that there will be a public hearing in front of the Common Council. I hope you understand our position, and we'd be hopeful that this doesn't set a precedent such that every manufacturing plant or distribution plant in Oak Creek in lieu of, as the mayor said, investing in bricks and mortar, sees this as a cheaper way out. And to the extent, again, that there's operational requirements for Komatsu that makes this a more feasible option, we're certainly understanding of that. And, we'd like to balance that with the impact that it's having on the neighborhood. So with that, I mean, if you have any questions of me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Doug.
Mayor, this is Chelsea. I do have a question. So this scenario seems very similar to another applicant that came in front of our plan commission, and it was specific to a car dealership. And they wanted to store items similar to this, have an identified location for those specific vehicles because another facility had closed or they were moving products from one facility to the next. So I'm just trying to understand the difference with those two scenarios, because I know that one, it was encouraged to find another way to store product, even though they had another facility that was closing or they were moving product from. I just want to understand the differences.
And in that particular scenario, Commissioner Chandler, they were looking to store, basically, they should be in I guess that would be a B4 district.
Mm-hmm.
And that property they wanted to use was zoned institutional. That was actually a church they wanted to store it at, technically.
Okay.
Whereas this is an M1 manufacturing. So the zoning's really there. It's really coming down in the fashion we want to allow. We have had other people ask for outdoor storage. And as Doug said, I don't know if this is precedent setting because it really comes down to location.
Mm-hmm.
I would really have some heartburn over this being on the north end, much more than where it's proposed, where it's abutting two more manufacturing facilities, so to speak. So I think that's a step in the right direction.
Just one quick interjection.
Yep.
For that particular applicant, originally they wanted the car storage on their lot. And
in a field.
Yeah.
Right.
Which we don't allow them.
Okay.
It has to be a paved surface. And
paved surface.
we had heartburn with that because the project wasn't going off as planned at the intervals they thought they'd be ready for. Or they weren't, put it this way, they weren't standing up to their promises, keeping the field even cut and trimmed, more or less taking care of the vehicles. It was a big no-no.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I didn't explain that well, but you got it.
Yes.
So, okay. Any other questions from the commissioners? So again, there is a recommendation, okay? It's in approval form for the conditional use of the outdoor storage. Now, I don't know if language has to be added, that they'll continue to work with staff and things you want to see. If you're for it, it's in the affirmative. If you're a no vote, you would vote no on the affirmative. If you're for it, you'd vote yes. Am I correct in that, Carrie?
Yes, the motion is made in the affirmative. If you do not wish to support it, then you would vote no. Otherwise, you just vote yes.
Okay.
Mayor, another quick question before.
Yes, go ahead.
Voting. In preparation for the restrictions, is there a way we can identify how much product we would want on the property? Because 2+ acres, that's a lot of product. So is there a way to simplify that?
Well, I think
Mr.
if I may,
this is Carrie. One of their site plans actually identified the lengths and widths of the asphalt areas. It's roughly 95 feet from the grass strip to the edge of the proposed asphalt. And then the lengths are also specified on one of those maps. If the Plan Commission wishes to discuss scaling that area back, that's certainly something, and I think Doug may jump in here in a moment to kind of further this along. That's something that we can certainly discuss, but limiting the number of products is going to be tricky because for just in terms of enforcement purposes, we're not going to be going out there and counting the number of crates that are out there. That's why we wanted to have that specific delineation, that curbing or that physical barrier so that none of this can kind of drift. But we all know exactly where it's going to be. And then in terms of compliance, certainly talking about stacking and the maximum height that would be allowed in these areas. Certainly still very concerned about even temporarily having something that would be in excess of the height of the fence. So those are all considerations that we would be putting in the conditions and restrictions, and I'll certainly defer to the director for additional comment here.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. I thought you hit it dead on. I mean, we're not going to be out there with a tape measure and you know, if it's a crate, if it's under the fence line, if it's where it's supposed to be, I mean, we're going to be fine with that. I think the work we put in on the front end in terms of identifying where those areas are and the maximum extent of that will make it easier for everyone moving forward. And recognize this is a conditional use permit. And state law gives the city the ability to set time limits on the conditional use permit. So for instance, I think some of the things that Carrie had mentioned in her staff report, including setting maybe a shorter time period, maybe a 5-year time period where we review it again, and certainly tying it towards this particular instance so that it'd be storing crates of equipment for Komatsu. For some reason, Komatsu made a decision to relocate out of that facility, that conditional use permit goes away. So, you know, I think that there's enough there that, I mean, again, should the commission feel that it's inappropriate as a conditional use, that we'd have the ability to regulate that. I mean, and I know that Commissioner Chandler had some questions about some other instances, and you know, where I think there's a distinction to be made is that, and just talking about a proposal for outdoor storage of equipment on another site. I mean, I think that it certainly would have been a little bit more difficult to regulate effectively, and this was the 13th Street site, if you recall, 13th and Ryan Road. You know, it's easier for us to say, yeah, okay, yeah, that's in a crate, that's lower than the fence height, we're good, as opposed to, well, this piece of equipment is stored at its operating height, this one isn't, you know, this one's next to the building, this one isn't. So from the standpoint, I mean, if the commission and ultimately the common council after a public hearing feel that this is appropriate, I think that we can get to a level of detail that gives us the ability to properly enforce that.
Thank you.
All right. Chris, do you have anything before I ask for a motion?
Chris Farmer?
Yeah, it looked like you lit up here on my
Yeah, I'm not sure why it lit up, but I guess the one last thing that I will add is, again, you know, the only place where the crates will be storage are referenced or stored or referenced by, you know, the westerlymost side and then that southwest corner. The other area is going to be, you know, essentially be needed for staging and loading of essentially trucks. So it's that entire 2.5 acres will not be occupied with crates the way that it's demonstrated on the diagram.
Okay, thank you, Chris. If there's no further questions from the commission, we'll look for a motion.
I'll go.
Go for it, Don.
Donnie moves that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council approves a conditional use permit, outdoor storage of materials on the property at 10001 South Howell Avenue, after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared for the commission's review to the next meeting, January 26, 2021. I may have stuck an extra 0 in there, sorry.
And I think I missed a 4 there. So it should be 4 outdoor storage of materials, and we'll specify that that's crates.
Okay.
As amended.
Oracle second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Roll call.
Hannah, no.
Sullivan, no.
Perillo, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Chris, you're on mute.
Chris?
Guzikowski, no.
Ladani, no.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, no.
Where do we wind up?
Mr. Mayor, it appears that we had 5 no and 4 yes.
So it failed.
We do not have a majority approval.
Okay.
So what I can do is, if one of the applicants wants to, one of the representatives wants to contact me tomorrow, we can talk about next steps and options for you. And I think you can either email me or you can give me a call and we'll have a discussion.
Okay, I want to thank you guys for coming in. Again, contact Carrie. We can work through the issues going forward and see what we can come up with.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you much. Okay, moving on. 5D. 5D is a certified consideration of a certified survey map.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
we could not hear you. You were off mic.
Am I muted? Am I better now?
You weren't muted. We just couldn't hear you because you were off mic.
Oh, okay. That will get us to 5D. That is review of a certified survey map. This is for Blaine Supply, Inc. for the properties at 501 and 315 West Rawson Avenue. Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a proposed certified survey map to combine the 2 properties. Blaine's Farm and Fleet, Blaine Supply, Inc. is purchasing that formerly used as a single-family residence property, although zoned B4, to combine it with the overall Farm and Fleet property, and that's in anticipation of an expansion project. Current zoning is on the screen. Both of them are zoned B4 as a base district. The floodway and flood fringe appears to only affect the existing Blaine's Farm and Fleet on the very east side of the parcel. All of the existing residential structures are going to be removed from the parcel at 315, and that's an anticipation again of the expansion projects that we'll be discussing in the next agenda items. So some of this may overlap a bit. All of these projects are related for the last 3 items on the agenda. On the screen right now is the proposed certified survey map combining those properties. Again, we have a notation on here stating that those structures will be removed. The area that I have identified in red is a no further access restriction. Blaine's Farm and Fleet currently has 2 or 3 access points off of Rawson Avenue in addition to 6th Street. What this states is that the driveway that used to serve that single family residence will be removed and there will be no further access points that will be approved for this area. Again, flood zone on the east side of the existing Blaine's Farm and Fleet parcel. There is one additional item that will be added to the certified survey map prior to recording, and that's in the conditions, and that's for a utility easement. Utility easement is going to be necessary along essentially the entire length of Rawson Avenue. That's that north property line. We've got a couple of things going on here. There's an existing water main, and I believe there's also sanitary in there, perhaps. But a 10-foot wide easement would cover both of those areas that are needed from the utility. So that's one of the conditions that is in the suggested motion for approval, which is on the screen. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Kevin, is the applicant with us or any neighbors wishing to speak?
We have the applicant, design engineer, and a Blaine's rep, all available if there are questions.
Okay. Oh, if there's any questions. Okay, thank you. Then we'll go right to commission. We'll start with Christine. Anything, Commissioner Hanna? Okay, we'll come back. I'll give you one last kick at the cat at that one. Matt?
All of our concerns have been addressed.
Okay, Dawn?
No questions.
Greg?
No questions, thank you.
Chris?
No questions, sir. Thank you.
Looks like Christine, are you with us? You ready to?
Yeah.
Any,
Yes,
any questions?
I just lost my internet connection. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Happens. It's just the way we're living these days. Christine, any questions?
No, no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Chris, that gets me to Don.
No questions.
Fred?
No questions.
And Chauncey?
No questions. Thank you.
I have none either. Pretty straightforward on this one. And that property's been for sale as long as I can remember, so I think we're going in the right direction. Okay, motion then on D.
Seifert moves that the Planning Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Dave Wynn, Blaine Supply Incorporated, for the property at 501 and 315 West Rawson Avenue be approved with the following conditions. 1, that a 10-foot wide public utility easement along the entire north property line is added to the map prior to recording. 2, that all technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordination, geometry conditions, and corrections required for the compliance with the municipal code and Wisconsin statutes are made prior to recording.
Guzikowski will second.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Sullivan, I.
Grillo, aye.
Lorik, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Lasagna, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Okay, great. That was D. We'll now go on to E, and that is a plan review for building site, landscape, and related plans. Again, it's by David Wynn of Blaine Supply for a canopy addition and parking lot expansion for the properties at 501 and 315. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, talking about the same properties for the remainder of the agenda. So what Blaine's Farm and Fleet is proposing to do is kind of in two parts. One is to add a canopy onto the east side of the existing building for their customer pickup area. And 2 is to expand the parking lot on the east side to onto that parcel that we were talking about that they are acquiring. Part of that also includes an outdoor storage and display area for their trailers that we'll be discussing as part of a conditional use permit request in the next agenda item. And what you'll recall with that is previous conversations with regard to outdoor storage of their trailers in terms of their temporary use permits. So first, what we'll concentrate on is the proposed canopy, and the yellow highlighted and identified area here is what we're talking about. It's on the east side of the building. It's actually in the area that was formerly used as their outdoor garden center. So it's currently fenced, and they're proposing to replace that existing fencing, which is chain link, with a black vinyl coated chain link fence 8 feet tall. And customer pickup would be underneath this proposed metal canopy. The canopy itself is 83 feet in length, 42.5 feet in width, and 22 feet to the top of the canopy itself. And then the clearance height is about 17 feet or 14 feet if memory serves correctly. So customers would come into this area, drive into and underneath the canopy. There is a door or set of doors underneath the canopy that are existing on the building. And then you can see the yellow areas that would direct traffic back out through this gate. Now the entry gate is a little bit wider than the exit gate, 34 as opposed to 24 feet. But both the entry and the exit take you to an aisle for the parking. So it's taking you away from the traffic, although along the front of the building itself. Setbacks are currently met for the proposal. This gives you an idea of what the building would look like. People would be directed to that canopy through this drive-through kind of archway. Both are connected to the building. Now, signage is not actually part of this review. We worked with the applicant, and thank you very much to the applicant for working through these issues with us. This is kind of a unique proposal here. That structure that is going to be holding the signage is kind of it's a connected, it's a connected structure on poles. So it's not really a pole sign because it's connected to the building. And if it didn't have any signage, it would just serve as kind of an archway, as a decorative element made of metal. The sign on it, though, we worked with them in making that compliant with codes. So that's why it's not part of this or another review. So what we have here, that'll just go through the permitting process, but it kind of gives you an idea of how people would be directed to this pickup canopy, which is set back a little bit from the building itself due to the location of the doors. Gives you kind of an aerial perspective as well of how that pickup area is going to be coordinated. And that canopy, if we go back to it just a little bit, again, made of metal, so it'll need a 3/4 majority approval of the Plan Commission since it's not a masonry addition. The building itself is made of metal, so that's something that the Plan Commission has the authority to approve as part of an addition. Now moving on to the proposed expansion area of the parking. Again, this is going to be on the parcel that they acquired and was combined in the previous CSM. The addition of the parking stalls, this has changed just slightly to meet setback requirements, but most, if not all, of the proposed parking stalls are going to be used for, are proposed to be used for their outdoor storage and display of their trailers. But it's expanding and slightly reconfiguring the existing parking aisle that's on the east side currently. The landscape plan gives you a better idea of how this has been reconfigured. One of the things that we also worked with the applicant on, again, another thank you for working with us. There was a 1984 special use that applied to this property that required a 30-foot setback. So this parking lot has been slightly modified to meet that parking lot. It's also been slightly modified to meet the required 10-foot side setbacks established in that special use approval. We also did receive preliminary lighting plans in addition to this preliminary landscape plan. You'll see how this parking island has been expanded a bit for additional landscaping. We had some trees that were added along Rawson Avenue to a point. That was something that was mentioned by staff as being a requirement. Landscaping on the site has been modified over the years and we were trying to bring this a little bit closer in compliance with code requirements and previous approvals. The trailer storage area is also proposed, or the parking area as we talk about it right now, is proposed to be screened with this landscape drift here, as well as landscaping along the east line. Now, some of the existing trees are going to be retained here, but a lot of them are going to have to necessarily be removed. So we thank the applicant for retaining as much as possible and for the installation of the additional landscaping per staff comments, and additional landscaping at the entry and exit for that customer drive-up area as well. We may need a couple of revisions to the landscape plans just to ensure that the screening is adequate. The plants for screening need to be installed and maintained at a minimum height of 3 feet. Want to make sure that that's respectful of the existing single-family residence that's to the east, although it is still zoned before there is a residence that is existing. With that information, we do have a suggested motion in 2 parts for approval on the screen. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Kevin, is there anybody wishing to speak, neighbors or, again, a representative, or they just want to wait for questions?
They're all signed up for questions.
Okay. Then we'll start off. We'll go with Commissioner Chandler this time. We'll start there.
I do have a couple questions for the applicant. So my first question is, since the garden area is going to be removed for the drive-through, will that be placed someplace else?
Can you hear me?
Yep. David, we'll need your name and address for the record.
This is David Nguyen. I'm a senior design manager for Blaine's Supply Farm and Fleet. My address is 10579 Chicory Ridge Way, Roscoe, Illinois. Currently, we don't have the garden center. We've had that in the past. We have not had it the last probably 4 or 5 years. So right now that is it's occupying part of our outdoor sales lot, which is, we look at it essentially as a extension of our indoor sales lot. A big part of our business is selling stuff for the agricultural community. You got fence posts, gates, king cutter, things like that. So right now that's where the garden center used to be. We don't have immediate plans for bringing in a garden center again, but I mean, that could change, but it wouldn't go in that area.
Okay. And then another question in regards to the trailers. So presently those are sold on the property, is that correct?
Yes. Presently they're sold on the opposite end of the property, and one of the big reasons why we're bringing this project forth is there's a couple of different reasons. One is to get the trailers out of where they are now. They're currently behind a fenced in area. Limits the shopping. We have to go get the customer, let them in there to shop the trailers. We've been, I guess, doing it on a temporary permit yearly. And we're wanting to get the conditional use to have it in a set permanent location, and one that's a little more visible and more easily shopped by the customer. And that's why this property that we're proposing purchasing serves 2 purposes. It serves, that is one of them, to give us an area where we can permanently display our trailers for shopping. And then it also gives us a better flow pattern to build this canopy for our BOPIS service. With the recent pandemic, that part of our business has exploded immensely. So we just get a lot more traffic with the contactless service that we've been trying to provide with that. So by doing that, we can build the canopy, we can bring them in one entrance and bring them out in the new lot portion through the sales area, or turn the corner, turn immediately left and exit out through the front of the building.
A question for Carrie. Can you show us where the old area was and where the requested new area will be for the selling of the trailers?
Sure. Don't want to get too far off base with the trailers, since that's actually a conditional use permit request.
Oh, okay.
Where the trailers are currently stored, Dave, if I'm correct, is kind of behind the building.
Yeah.
And where the temporary use areas had been for the display had been on the west side in these 2 general areas previously.
So that's where the suggested area would be for future sales? Same location? Am I
No, what we're talking about is on the opposite end. We're going from the west to the east.
Okay. And so if I'm understanding correctly, close to the canopy, is that right?
Right.
Okay, got it. And then one additional question. I noticed that there is more parking in this area for where the canopy will be. Can you provide a little more information in regards to this parking? And as well in relationship to all the traffic that may be coming through there with the service under the canopy.
So on the plan that you're looking at now, that was the initial submittal that we put in after we had comments back. We revisited, and if you go to that plan there, it eliminates. We put that island in where that's, I guess, the left-hand portion of that island is the edge of the asphalt now. So some of those are existing trees. We left those in place, left that a green space, and more defines this area. I mean, it's still parking. It could be used for parking, but it defines it a little bit better for the trailer display area. So you can see we have parking stalls on that east edge of the lot, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think, that run vertically along that island. And those would be occupied mainly with trailers. If they weren't, they could have parking there. Yeah, so that's essentially that square is what we anticipate for the trailer display.
Okay, so the parking is for the trailers, or the
Yes,
parking spaces, I should say.
Yeah, they're parking. They'll be striped for parking stalls, but the trailers typically fit in a parking stall.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Fred,
No questions at this time.
Don?
More of a comment than a question. I like it. I'm one that's used the pickup, and considering that it's probably going to be ongoing, and on the other side of the building, it got out of hand at times, a lot of confusion. So I can see why you're doing this. I think it's a great idea. My only, if I could play armchair quarterback, well, knowing how many people come for pickups, I would personally, not knowing what thoughts went into this, I'd flip the in and out around, because you could have cars backing up into the parking area where if you come in on the other side, you got a lot of room for cars to line up without being out in the parking lot. But I'm sure you have your reasons. That's just my 2 cents. But otherwise, I think it's a great idea.
I think that's a good point, actually.
And we've I don't know if I'm still unmuted.
No, you're good, David. Go ahead.
Okay, and if you look at that, it's a 2-lane traffic pattern underneath the canopy, and we've actually run into this on other stores in the last 6 months, 8 months. We were building a new store, and as the pandemic hit and things really started to explode on it, we did notice that cars were backing up. So we on the fly redesigned it to get 2 lanes in there, which really helps that situation. It has calmed down a bit from its peak, but we don't expect it's still going to plane out at a higher level for us. So I think with it set back, the cars come in, they can pull in too wide, and they pull all the way up to that front door. So we do have quite a bit of stacking space there.
Okay, understood. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thanks, Don. Chris?
I agree with Don. This is long overdue, I think. Just freshens everything up. I also think that one question I had would be, but normally it's about time that you come around for your tire request. Will the tires be the trailers for the tires located on this side of the building then, or are you still going to keep those when you come back around? And maybe I shouldn't be bringing that up now, but how would that fit in the conjunction with everything else?
We haven't discussed that, but our service center is on the other side of the building, and the tires typically go hand in hand with the service center.
Okay, but normally you have don't you have like the truckload sale or something like that that comes once a year that we get a request for, or maybe I'm wrong, but
I'm not sure. We do have we do have tire sales, pretty good ones from time to time. But I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you. It looks good.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, it looks like Sarah from Blaine's also raised her hand to speak on that.
Oh, okay. Sarah, go ahead. Identify yourself, please. For the record, name and address.
Sarah, you should be able to speak.
She might be having connection problems.
Anything, Sarah?
Sarah, if you're on the Zoom controls, there should be something to unmute yourself.
It looks like she's unmuted, but it's not picking up anything on her end.
Yep, Sarah, we're unable to hear you. If you want to use the chat, you can type in here what your response is and I can read it out loud.
Is it working for her?
Might be a long type. If it was me, it'd be taking a long time. I'll tell you what, Sarah, keep working at it. I'll make sure we come on back to you. I don't see anything.
I have no further questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Greg?
No concerns. I agree with kind of everything that was said. I think it's a good idea and I have no problems with it. Thank you.
Gotcha.
Mr. Mayor, I have a response from Sarah in the Q&A chat.
Yep, go ahead.
The reason we have the double access adjacent to the store is that we load up from the building and especially salt and in bulk.
Okay, so basically, they've thought about the product they're selling and that's why they're doing it. Keep it close to the building, less handling of it. So I think that, I don't know if that answers the question, but thank you,
Yeah,
Sarah.
that essentially does. It all ties in hand to hand with our outdoor sales lot. The items that come through are typically the quick moving items or anything else that is purchased. The better layout we have for it, the quicker we can get people loaded up and move them out.
Gotcha. Okay, Greg, I had hit you, correct? Asked you?
Yes, I'm all done. Thanks.
Okay, Dawn?
No additional questions.
Matt?
Nothing here. Thank you.
And Christine?
No concerns here, thank you.
I like the plan. I like the canopy. I visited your Verona store. It's a little different, but well done. I think this is great. Helps solve the trailer stuff too. I just want to ask where you're going to store these trailers. Are we going to limit the number of trailers? Because how many stalls do you have there? You got a pretty good sized lot there and you're going to have double rows of trailers. What are we looking at? Like 75, 80 trailers that could be stuffed in there? And will you be stacking them like utility trailers?
No, I don't believe we have that many. I don't know exactly how many trailers we would have out there. 30 maybe max, I would think. And they would not be stacked.
Okay. Do you secure them anyway? Do you chain them, fence them?
I believe they chain them up.
Okay. And then this is just a question for staff. When I believe the existing home is at 315 West Ross and that Blaine's company is going to acquire, will that driveway go away?
Yes, the driveway access will go away. And I do have a few more responses from Sarah. She wants to thank the Plan Commission. It's long overdue for the canopy. The double lanes were installed in the most recent store in Grand Rapids to great success. She also would like to clarify that about 10 trailers would be stored outside. And I did a quick count on the landscape plan. Along the east side, there's 23 striped stalls. And then in the kind of parallel parking stalls, that's 8. So that would be kind of the area that we're talking about in the next item for the trailer storage area.
Oop, got ahead of myself.
And she also says that there's typically not more than a lot more than what they have now. And yes, they are all chained together.
Okay, great. And then the house will be raised, I would imagine.
Yes.
Okay. question for the Blaine's people, and Assistant Chief Havey, please chime in if this is applicable. Occasionally when we have a house like this, fire or police can utilize it for training purposes. Would there be any interest for Blaine's to lend that to the community for training? And Chief Havey, please chime in if you guys are interested in something like that, or if another neighboring department might be.
Yeah, at times if we are afforded opportunities to do some training in a structure, we'll take advantage of that. There are some insurance and liability provisions that we would take action on first before we would do anything. And typically, you know, it's really difficult to do house burns on main thoroughfares such as Rawson Avenue, or DNR permitting is pretty limiting on what we can do for training burns. But actually just training in general, if we have the opportunity, we'll take advantage of that. And I can follow up with the folks at Farm and Fleet to see if that's one of the options. If they choose to lend us that opportunity, that would be much appreciated.
And folks, I don't expect an answer from you, but it would be great to take it to the powers that be and see if they'd be applicable to help out the community in that sense.
Yeah, that's something definitely we can discuss.
Okay. Other than that, no, I don't have any questions. I'm all good with it. So with that being said, if there's no further questions or comments, motion on E.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
there's one final comment from Sarah.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I'm not entirely certain where this one came in, but we could, as long as it would be complete, I think it's for the training. We could, as long as it would be completed before we need to start construction. And they'll discuss it with legal counsel if interested, and if passes, they will be able to complete the sale and follow up.
Great, thank you for the consideration. We appreciate that, Sarah. Motion on E, please, if there's no other questions.
Lorick moves that the Plan Commission approve the site and building plans submitted by David Wynn, Blaine Supply, Inc. for the properties at 501 and 315 West Rawson Avenue with the following conditions. Number 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. Number 2, that permits are obtained for all proposed signs. Number 3, no outdoor storage is approved as part of this plan. All requests for outdoor storage and display of retail merchandise shall require conditional use permit in conformance with applicable code requirements. Number 4, that all light sources are shielded and directed downward, that the color temperature of the fixtures are limited to a maximum of 3,500 kelvins, and that light sources adjacent to the existing single-family residence to the east are shielded on the side of the fixture adjacent to the residence. Number 5, that the landscape plans are revised to incorporate staff comments and code requirements. And number 6, that all detailed revised plans are submitted in digital format to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications.
Guzikowski, second.
Roll call.
And I.
Sullivan, I.
Grillo, I.
Lorick, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Aldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, I.
Okay. That will get us to item F, and that is a review for a conditional use permit to allow for the outdoor storage of the retail merchandise, specifically the trailers on the east side of the Farm and Fleet lot on the properties at 501 and 315 West Rawson. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since we've all been talking about this, I don't want to give too much detail other than it's going to be located in the parking stalls that we've been talking about. A little bit of an update on the landscape plan from what's shown on the screen. The previous temporary use permit requests that had been submitted for the outdoor display of the trailers going back almost annually to 2010. So this is something that staff has been encouraging and working with Farm and Fleet over the years to get to this kind of this permanent location. So we really do appreciate the work that's been done on the back end for this. And the screening will be by landscaping. There may be fencing that gets added to that east side, a little bit for security, a little bit for additional screening. So if that is something that will end up going in there, staff will take a look at that as part of the landscape plans. Potential conditions for the conditional use permit, if this is recommended for approval, the screening requirements to ensure that we are putting something in that's sufficient along Russin Avenue, along the east property line. Lighting that we had just talked about, just to ensure that the context sensitive nature for the existing residents that are still there, making sure that those fixtures are properly shielded and directed downward. Want to just make that very clear that any kind of change to the fixtures over the years, we do have these requirements for them to be part compliant with the code that's in existence at the time. And then the prohibition of anything other than the trailers for sale and limiting the extent of the outdoor storage to these striped stalls that we are seeing in the proposed plan. So with that, there is a suggested motion for approval on the screen. If there are any questions for staff, I'm certainly available to answer them. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Put it out there. Anybody wishing to speak out there, Kevin? Or are they just waiting on questions? Any neighbors?
No neighbors for this one, and it looks like everybody's just waiting for questions.
Okay. Christine, you want to start us off?
Sure. Actually, I have no questions. Looks good to me. Thank you.
Okay. Matt?
I really don't have questions, more a comment. We've been doing this since 2010. I think we should fully support this in the sense of moving forward, and something that we've wanted. And if you look at most of the stores, which I did take the liberty of today, just kind of through aerials and that, almost every other store in the state of Wisconsin, they do have some form of storage of their trailers out on their parking lots. It looks more permanent. So I think this is just a good solution to a temporary issue we've been dealing with for a while. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Dawn?
Yeah, I agree. Looks good.
All right. Greg?
No concerns. Thank you.
Chris?
No concerns here either.
Okay. Don?
Sorry, no questions.
Okay. Fred?
No questions.
Chelsea?
I do have a couple questions for the applicant. In regards to the screening, and I may have missed this earlier, can you provide more information on what that looks like for the side where the trailers will be closest to the residents?
The screening is mainly handled with landscaping along that property line in that 10-foot space between the east property line and the edge of our pavement.
Okay, so it looks like there will be trees there. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, there's some existing trees and then we're adding more trees. We've got some shrubs in there and
Okay.
some evergreens.
And then also with the trailers, will there be viewings at night to look at the trailers, or are they mostly at a certain time frame?
Well, the viewing, they'd be able to view it during our open hours.
Okay.
So yeah, it typically would be, somebody pulling in, parking near them and walking the trailers
Okay. And
right
then,
before they come into the store.
oh, my apologies. Please continue.
Oh, no, that's good.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And then in regards to showing that the trailers are available for sale, what does the signage, what's the plan for signage or how to show that these trailers are for sale?
Well, the signage would be small signages, I think, on each trailer saying what the price is. It's not like we're putting up trailers for sale sign, directing them towards that. It's mainly just.
And is this what's done today with the trailers that are on site?
Yes.
Okay. And a quick question for Carrie, since this is now, the goal is to make this a more permanent site. Is that acceptable to have a sign on each trailer?
The sign is going to be advertising probably the pricing and a little bit of details. So it's probably not so much a sign per se as I think of it as more like the the sticker or the information that gets put onto the window of a vehicle that's for sale in a car lot. We are not going to be looking at something that would incorporate flags or large signs or, you know, A-frame signs that would direct people to this particular part of the parking lot. We're not looking for anything like that to be included in this conditional use permit request.
Thank you.
I really don't have anything. I just want to make clarification in the motion. It says retail merchandise and in parentheses trailers. Are we going to specify trailers, or will we see mowers and mulch and rototillers showing up in this area as well? Will we specify just trailers?
Yes, we are. Staff is saying that the specification is for trailers, no other outdoor merchandise. Trailers were specified in the request as well.
Okay, I just don't want it to say display of retail merchandise, and then we have everything from half the store out there. Just want to be clear. Okay. With that being understood, motion on F.
Seifert moves that the planning commission recommends that the common council approve a conditional use permit amendment to allow the outdoor display of retail merchandise trailers on a property of 501 and 315 West Rawson Avenue after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared by the planning commission review at the next meeting, January 26, 2021.
Guzekowski, a second.
Roll call, please.
Anna, I.
Sullivan, I.
Grillo, I.
Lorik, aye.
Kevich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Bonnie, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, I.
Okay, there you have it. Thank you very much. Appreciate the patience waiting this long to get through those last 3 items, but it was worth it for you. So very well.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Sarah has some closing thank yous. Thank you to the Plan Commission for your time and consideration. Sorry, the voice was not translating onto Zoom, even though it shows unmuted. We plan to begin construction in the spring of 2021 and have it completed for Toyland this fall. As a longstanding member of this business community, we are proud to be a family-owned company based in Wisconsin. We are looking forward to growing with the city of Oak Creek and provide a better level of service in our BOPUS, which is buy online, pick up in store business. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. We do appreciate you being located in Oak Creek. And as you can see by your business, you're a very popular business here. So thank you. That is it before adjournment. Just again, as usual, I want to thank the staff. It was, you know, for coming right out of the gate. We had some really big things to look at here. So as always, want to thank them. Want to thank Kevin. Always did a great job for us. I know this ain't the norm, but it's definitely working for us. We seem to manage it pretty well. Thanks, Assistant Chief Havey. I know it's a draw on your night, but you are essential here. Thank you. And then commissioners, thank you for the first one. I'm sorry it went as long as it did, but it's important we go through all this stuff. So as always, thanks. So with that, unless somebody has a comment, we can adjourn. Any comments? Okay. Motion for adjournment.
Grillo moves to adjourn at 8:29.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Anna, I.
Sullivan, I.
Grillo, I.
Lorik, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Bonnie, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, I.
Great. Thank you, everybody. One down and probably about, what, another 25 to go. So then we'll be into 22. Everybody have a good week, and I will see you in 2 weeks, if not sooner. Thank you.